You know, I had the typical posters growing up on the wall. I had the Countach, I had the Testarossa, the slant nose 911, a third gen Pontiac Trans Am. Never really was into the BMWs until I said, you know what, one day I was kind of thought I want to get into the classic car scene. I found a really affordable E24, which is a 1985 635, but it was a Canadian car. The owner was a real enthusiast. It was out in Woodstock, Ontario, but the body wasn't any good. So after talking to my auto body friends, they said, you know what, you're probably going to get a parts car. And I'm like, a parts car? You know, where am I going to store this parts car? What am I going to do getting, you know, how am I going to get all these spare parts in my garage? So I kept on the hunt for a parts car. I said, you know what, this actually makes sense. In fact, I wouldn't restore a car today without having at least one. So I came across this, a 1989 635 California car. Body was perfectly straight, but the paint had been cracked from sitting in the Orange County sun for almost 25 years. But the car that I first bought had all the parts that were going to go on this. It was all upgraded, so it had a manual conversion. In 1989, they didn't make any manual cars that came into the US. There was only 500 cars that were all automatic. So this has a manual conversion now, headers, exhaust, and of course went with the Pro Blue paint job. After some research on what colors to go with, you know, I went across all the spectrum, across the different paints that BMW offered. I remembered that TVR, which is a British auto manufacturer, they had a pearl blue, and I said, you know what, let's just put some more pearl in it, and let's go custom with this car. So there she's born, Fraulein, which means darling in German. Get a lot of compliments on the paint, and I've been enjoying this car ever since. Having Fraulein, the E24, kind of got me into the BMW enthusiast scene. I met a lot of people, and that's when I discovered a beautiful car, which was a 1972 2002 TII. A lot of confusion when you say 2002. Sometimes I just say 1972 2 Series, if there's any sort of confusion. Small bumper, roundy lights, and of course TII. Those had to be the specs. So I was lucky enough to come across one that was being sold at a high-end dealership, and you know what? He said he got tons of calls, but no one showed up, and I picked it up. It was a very, very special car. It only had 42,000 original miles. It was 43 years old, so less than 1,000 miles per year on this vehicle, and it's just been a fantastic part of the collection. Not a week goes by without a social media post, someone sending me a text saying, is it for sale? Is it for sale? When you do find a TII that's for sale, they're starting to approach 911 air-cooled prices. If you ever go to Bring a Trailer or any of those websites, you'll see they doubled from where they were only 5 years ago. So I feel very fortunate. Every time someone wants to buy it, I say to myself, okay, why do they want to buy it? I probably have something special here, so I'm just going to hold on to it. So after picking up the 2002, I realized this is probably the reason why a lot of people don't get into this hobby. Sometimes it's not about the cost up front, about the actual vehicle, but it's more about where am I going to put this? Where do I store it? I did a reevaluation of my life, and I said I had a pretty big house with a lot of rooms not being used and very little garage space. So I'm going to downsize the house and upsize the garage. I thought, great, I have tons of space for cars for many, many years to come. The garage was finished in October 6th of 2016. By October 31st, the garage was full. I actually didn't have any more room for any more cars because I went out on a little bit of a shopping spree. So the notion that if you have the space, you will fill it up really rang true for me. You know, one of the things that people always do is they pull up beside me and they ask me, you know, what year is that car? And they always try to take a stab at guessing. You know, they nudge their wife or their kid and say, see, I told you it was a 72, or I told you it was a 68.
What year is that?
72.
Nice, beautiful.
Thanks. And I actually pause and I ask them, I say, you know, so you know, what do you like about the car? And they give me a story, and they often tell me that, you know, their dad had this car, or they remember driving in their uncle's car when they were a kid. I'll say something like, you know what, why don't you think about getting one of these again? You know, it's a great thing to get into if you're interested. And I always see a little bit of a sparkle in some folks' eyes. Again, it's just such a cool thing to share with everyone. And the more of these cars that we continue to reserve and keep on the road, you know, the greater it is for the community. It's really about a feeling that you get with the car. You know, the stance, the paint, the way it looks. It's just a feeling as you walk up to the vehicle. You can only get so much through a photograph or an advertisement. You really do need to see the car in person. And that's sort of when I strike. It's like an emotion that I pick up. The thing that usually seals the deal is opening the door and having that smell, that old European smell or that old muscle car smell. I'm concerned about having a car that sits in the garage and it's only meant to sit in the garage and only be trailered to shows. I prefer to drive the cars. It's actually better for the cars. It gets the fluids going, the lubrication going. And at the end of the day, you have a lot more fun driving it, and that's how you meet the people. I will see an E28, which is an original 5 Series in a parking lot or at a show, or an E24 635 at a show, and I'll walk right up to the person and say, I think we probably should know each other. And then we'll get to talking, and it's like, yep. And then he or she will pull out their phone and then have a whole bunch of pictures of my car. So we know each other through the communities. As cool as social media is for all the things that it brings to the world, it really does lack that human connection. You can't connect digitally to people. Car shows, the car hobby, car collection forces you out. You do have that human connection. You actually have to go out and see people. My absolute favorite memory or favorite thing to come out of this is the messages or the phone calls or the texts I get sometimes weeks, months, or a couple years later after I've met someone, and they said to me, hey, guess what? I just restored a 2002. Or hey, guess what? I got that Challenger that I was always dreaming of. They let me know that I was in part some sort of influence on them on doing that. That is just the absolutely greatest feeling when I hear that. And then of course, we get to share stories. We get to share, you know, knowledge about the cars. And I feel very privileged and honored to be a steward of these vehicles. I don't take my role for granted in having this collection. My girls really enjoy, you know, going on cruises with me, and they're starting to point out classics on the road. They always take a pretty good stab at makes and models. And they say, hey, Daddy, you've got that one with the blue and white round symbol on the car. So I've really been trying to encourage my kids to you know, keep up with the hobby, and I've really been a great time sharing this with them. And again, feel very honored just to be part of this, of these, what I feel like each represents a piece of automotive history for sure.